Hey everyone, welcome to the Smarter Spaces podcast. If you're new here, where have you been? We do this now bi-monthly, loads of great topics around smarter spaces, whether it be marine, which we've done the boardroom, and now we're going back to the classroom. We're talking all about education. I've got two amazing guests lined up for the show this afternoon or this morning or wherever you're listening to this. So with that, let's roll the credits and get into the show. We have got some amazing guests. My good friend, Dan Noullet, Director of Learning Technologies and Media Services for Carnegie Mellon University. It seems like ages since we were on a show talking about motorbikes. I mean, education. Dan, how you doing?
How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you for joining us. And new to a podcast from Crestron, we have Justin with the swell shirt there. I need to get my hands on one of those. That's very, very corporate. Justin, tell everybody on the show listening what you do for us here at Crestron.
Yeah, I'm specific to the education channel. So I am, for lack of a better terms, a Kool-Aid mixer for everyone in the education industry, making sure that they know and love Crestron. And I do that for the Northeast United States.
Okay, very cool. The cold and chilly bit of the minute, I'm guessing. So it's the long sleeve top. Now, many schools are obviously looking and using their fourth quarter year to plan and design their projects for the upcoming summer terms when it gets slightly warmer in installs. They're designing now for the next semester, I guess, and next year. And we're going to be talking about the trends that you guys are seeing and what's new and what's out there and what's new in favor and out of favor, I guess, and how those refresh cycles, can take longer with the pace of change and intact. And obviously in America, we're not going to go political at all, but clearly there's a new administration coming in that maybe are going to change things up and are going to make that a little bit different. So I guess a question to you, Dan, obviously, this period of October through to November when you're not eating turkey for Thanksgiving or buying loads of stuff in Black Friday, December is going to be an interesting time for you with regards to planning and designing projects for that up and coming year. How are you preparing your projects and what are you looking at and the trends that you're looking and designs that you've got coming up for 2025?
So it's interesting you mentioned about the October through December for the upcoming semester and the next summer. We've actually changed models. If anybody looks at our last podcast when we were speaking about how we do our refresh, we actually don't do it the standard way, right? So years ago, the standard way of refresh, we all know, was 3, 5, 7, 10, 12 years, depending on your product line, depending on what you had, depending on how you'd get your money. With our last podcast, we mentioned about grading. Along with that grading, we had to develop a project planning cycle as well. And now our project planning cycle is actually almost 2.5 years long. So the stuff that's coming up for this summer of 2025, we already knew about it almost 1.5 years ago, according to our project plan. So we at that time understand what our standards are going to be, and we continue to change our standards. So our trending is maybe, a day behind, but it's also the stability that we're looking for in our standards and our trends. So like when we got hooked on MVX, right? So as we were, brought MVX into our world years ago, and we all said, no, we're not doing that to our networking folks. They're going to hurt us. We fell into it. We were going with it full throttle, and we continue to work with NVX products and AV over IP with NDI cameras, along with the AV over IP from Crestron. So one of the things that we're looking, that we're always looking forward, and it's not just this life cycle, is where we at today versus tomorrow, and where's the industry going. So for us, we are looking at how do we make our networks better, not necessarily all of our AV better, but our networks to support the AV that's going to lie on top of that network. Because one of the things that we know we can do is we can isolate our networks, and we can go with the Crestron model or the Sony NDI, any model that's AV over IP. But what we can't do right now in most cases is use that full model on a campus-wide network without the fear of bringing down that commodity network that everybody uses. So we look at it from all perspectives outside of not just AV, but the networking that we're on, our users. Where is our faculty at with the current technology that we have? Are they looking at the next best thing, right? Because as technologists, we're always excited for the next greatest thing, and we're willing to put it in. However, we can't always do that because the faculty are not always willing, and the users, and that's just fine, because we just have to make sure we have a product out there that they can use and continue to use without failure.
Yeah, very cool. It's interesting you talk about getting the network right. I guess it's, kind of getting the roads ready before you put the cars on it. You can have the great new cars and bikes, but obviously getting the underpinning and getting that network just right and ready for all the new cool tech coming in. Justin, what are you seeing from other customers? You're hearing on the other side of the fence, obviously. What are you getting requests for in this kind of October to December planning sessions, and what's kind of surprising you with regards to, it's funny, we were already like 5-10 minutes in and no one's mentioned AI yet. So clearly someone's going to talk about that at some point.
Yeah. But the bigger thing, I think, is to Dan's point, getting the network ready and having standards. The two things that I believe most people want to do, but sometimes don't really have the ability to do, or they're not really sure where to start. The one thing I always do try and stress is the interop between the AV team and the network team, as Dan's saying. Everything's on the network nowadays. I mean, my home system, let alone when you talk about something like a school campus, it's probably overwhelming to the network team. And when you try and throw something on like AV over IP, it's just, it might be that one thing where they say, we can't do it. No, to Dan's point. But once you read through the very simple set of rules and regulations that Crestron has, which is maybe 3 sentences, people start to kind of lighten up, ease up, and start to realize that, hey, yeah, maybe this can be a standard moving forward. So just in the past year, our AV over IP, I think, really has taken off. It really has been something that people are looking at more closely and more to the point of saying, it's not the future, it's now.
Yeah, very cool. Now, we've had a couple of trade shows come up. I just got back off of Microsoft Ignite, which was very interesting. And I know, Dan, there's the big education technology collaboration show, ETC. Again, what trends are you seeing at the show, and what's kind of going out of favor? Again, the world is changing as we kind of move post pandemic. What's kind of being moved more to the back burner and being brought forward that you're seeing from these kind of big shows out there in the industry?
So unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend ETC, but I attended another educational conference called EDUCAUSE.
Okay.
And at EDUCAUSE, it's interesting that there's more administration stuff there than there was technology for the classroom itself, right? So one of the things that I do want to get out there is folks like Crestron and the other manufacturers need to look into some of these conferences to help guide some of those CIOs and higher leaders that are at those conferences like that. What I found out is, those conferences like EDUCAUSE are good for CIOs, and they're all there. And then there's folks like me in the director level that go to also to see what the other universities and players are doing, to come to find out that a lot of them still need a lot of guidance of where we want to take our industry in the classroom too, because of one, money's a big thing, right, in the world today. You talk about new administration, and we talk about, sustainability in our classrooms with cost rising from inflation and everything like that. We have to find and look for solutions that are not on the higher end anymore, but still accomplish the same end goal, right? So if you have user experiences that are happening now and you can't afford what you have now, you have to now look at all manufacturers across the board and find out what's reasonable in your price range that can still accomplish that same end goal. I mean, you'll hear people saying that they're doing course capture now, right? So, there's a lot of folks out there talking about different manufacturers providing course capture with their camera systems that, a faculty member can walk in, press a button, it's automatically recording, uploading it to their drive somewhere so they can share with their students. That is a big topic that, since post-pandemic, that basically hit us high, right? A lot of conferencing, a lot of recordings, so people that are sick can review it, and it's becoming bigger than that. So,
Right.
that's some of the stuff that I can see right now from my side.
Justin, what about you?
Yeah, big conversations in this past year at the trade shows seem to be simplicity, ease of use, and USB-C. Probably all three of them in. So the USB-C seemed to be
That
the
comes into
number
ease of
one.
use and simplicity as well, because you can't get it the wrong. Now you can't get it the wrong way up, and
Absolutely, yeah. You're not plugging it in upside
power.
down. Hopefully, somebody will find a way. But yeah, I mean, what we need to realize as a manufacturer is, Dan is the expert, but Dan is putting these rooms in for people that are experts in their fields, that are teaching the next generation, but not necessarily experts in AV and IT. So the simplicity of a room where a professor in the sciences or in the math department would be able to walk in, have a room up and running, and whether it's lecture capture, whether it's a multi-camera system, or whether it's just simply turning a projector on and having a confidence monitor in the back, something where they feel comfortable and they don't have to worry about the system. They just have to worry about the teaching. So that was the number one thing, was just the simplicity of control, the USB. And wireless seemed to be a conversation, and it oddly was split kind of 50-50 right down the middle. Some people love it and some people hate it. So yeah, it's in an
I
interesting
prefer
mix.
copper.
Yeah.
I'm still, again, maybe it's just because I'm getting old, but I still prefer a bit of copper than wireless. I think you can beat it for
No, it's
performance.
always there.
So with wireless, I mean, you're right. I mean, 50-50, right? It's 50% of us love the wired because it's just like a network as well. I prefer a wired network over wireless because you're less failure at an access point going down, too much draw from the network pulling that signal down. And when you're in a class, having a wireless is a great backup solution if your wires broke, from the HDMI cable or USB-C cables that are going in. But yeah, wireless to this day, and since its inception, has been 50-50, if not more hardwire versus wireless. But there's other industries out there that prefer the wireless over the hardwire because you can't tap into their tables. Their tables are too expensive. And we have spaces like that too. We have to go with wireless because of that solution. You can't drill into a table.
Yeah, again, it's a convenience but again, I'll throw myself under the bus. Problem with wireless is then you're into batteries, and as we all learned about 10, 15 minutes ago, my headset was flat, my batteries are flat. So what are you going to do? Again, if I had a wire, we wouldn't be worrying about that. Again, I guess that's an interesting piece around that. I want to touch base a little bit on the new, or it's not new, but the dynamic around how we address different audiences. Now clearly things like disability and special needs, it's being more looked at. And again, there are also hidden disabilities. I know myself, my son's got ASD and ADHD, and clearly I've got ADHD because I'm a bit nuts. But how, and I also mentioned AI and stuff like that, but there's now becoming, off the back of Ignite, we've got, real-time language translation, we've got transcription now coming into the products. How are you guys looking at these new technologies coming in that can help with regards to students that have special needs and have requirements for either, again, transcribing and maybe even translation as well when you're doing things on a global level?
So
Either.
for us, disabilities, we've always paid attention to that for years. This isn't new to the industry. It's just getting better. It's a lot better than what it was, right? Before, you would do some of the stuff with assisted listening devices in a space. So somebody that's hearing impaired, we give them the capabilities of having extra devices. We have them connected. For translations and stuff, there was always transcribing companies out there that could do it live. There's companies out there that could do different translations. With today's software and the capabilities that's out there, it just improved tenfold. And as we continue to grow, that'll become a bigger priority to put into spaces, because one, the cost will start to come down because we have more and more players in that field, to where in the past there was only a handful of players, and those handful of players was trying to buy up everybody to make it a small thing so they could keep that monopoly of that industry. But like you said, with Microsoft and folks coming bigger into play, it's going to help us with those integrations down the road for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Justin, are you seeing anything on of regards to kind of people doing more kind of guest and more remote stuff now? Are people requesting stuff around that?
Yeah, and I think one thing that COVID really helped was getting technology in the rooms. Our One Beyond camera systems, and kind of people grabbing anything off the shelf at some point when things got really bad. But giving the people with disability the ability to attend a classroom, and if it's something where there's a social anxiety and they wanted to stay in the room, they had the ability to do that. Also, just a temporary disability with a student maybe who had a broken leg and couldn't make it all the way across campus to their next class, they now have the ability to have that classroom in their dorm room or in a student study space. They flip open their laptop and they're there. And that seemed to be one of the main things that I saw in recent times. And it's only getting better to the point where now you have lecture capture, you have screen recording or classroom recording, and you have this multi-camera system where it's really starting to feel like you are in the class instead of just listening to an audio tape and being kind of disconnected.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Dan, you guys don't have any problem with regards to retaining and capturing, new students coming to Carnegie Mellon. Your history and heritage is obviously, great for getting, people recruiting and retaining students. But there obviously are some other maybe lesser known colleges and faculties out there. What can we kind of take from the metrics and what they're telling us, and how can we kind of use some of this technology to get people in? Is there something that the tech can do to try and again attract students to come to a certain faculty or a certain university or college?
I think the one thing that I've seen, and speaking with a few friends who do have children that are looking at colleges, technology means a lot. When a student walks into a classroom and they see a chalkboard, they kind of chuckle and laugh. And my buddy told me his kid was walking around campus like this the whole time, checking out the Wi-Fi, making sure that the phone had a signal.
He was on TikTok. He wasn't checking out the Wi-Fi. He was on TikTok. Come
on. But yeah, I mean, from something like that, the overarching, can I get a phone signal, down to how am I going to learn? Because as we all know, today's students are different than when we were in college. There's no 4x3 cart with a VCR getting rolled out. There's no overhead projector anymore. It's, and they expect the new technology, and more importantly, they expect it to work. So to ensure that you do have the latest and greatest, essentially keeping up with the Joneses for your local colleges, it is more important than, unfortunately, the finance department thinks.
Yeah.
So
go on, Dan.
Sorry, Neil. Yeah, position. No. So I need a rebuttal here on that statement, right? So not everybody, like you said, the finance departments can't handle that, to be keeping up with the Joneses all the time, and the problem with that is that's what the industry, these manufacturers, you got to have money, you got to do this. What they're not thinking of is there a better package for less expensive to help with that cutting edge type of technology that's not going to break the bank. I will tell you, a lot of our faculty on our campus use chalkboards and whiteboards on a consistent basis. We get yelled at, actually, if we don't have those capabilities. But what we do is we make sure we have a camera available to hit that blackboard or chalk, that blackboard or whiteboard, in order to project it over a conference call, or to enlarge it into a space if you have a large lecture hall, because you have somebody that can't see the board from way back in the back in the day. Nobody thought of that, right? Now we put cameras on it and we project it on side monitors throughout the room to give that visibility. But the keeping up with the Jones statement is, that's a great thing. However, that's also going to push people's tuition up. So it puts them out of the price range for unfortunate students. So we have to look at the industry from some different things. And when I talk to the local schools in the area, right, they're always looking at us like you said, we don't have a problem with retention. We don't have a problem getting students in. But one of my goals, is to help those other universities across the country to understand that you don't have to put $100,000 system into a space. You can accomplish that with this. However, you may have more failure rate. You may not have the same quality, right? And like you said, in order for us, we want to keep that quality because we have expectations that we have set for ourselves years ago, and we got to keep those expectations. And we continue to look for cost savings as well, right? Because we're not always going to have the money, and we're going to be, stopped with the budgets and everything. And we've had over the years, we keep continuing to ask for money. Like you said, the finance department keeps denying us, but we keep asking for it because we have a standard to keep, and we need to keep with that. So I would say there's definitely different ways into that classroom with technology, and not just trying to keep up with the Joneses.
I mean, what would be your not top three, but again, for any universities or schools watching this, again, as you say, you help other universities and faculties, and again, if you were talking to those people that are trying to have challenges with their finance department, what would be your kind of top three or top things to look at for them?
So one of the things that we do is we look at the use cases, right? So what is the use case of the spaces? Who's using it? Somebody mentioned it here before. You have the different departments doing different things in it. We also take advantage of the manufacturer's monitoring systems that can record button pushes, right? So if you use a manufacturer's system that records it, then you have data to say this gets used all the time. Then we also have committees around campus that we develop standards. And what we've done with that is we've came across the board from our facilities to our registrar's office to departments to within our own computing services where we live. And we come up with a game plan of saying this is why we need it. And we're always writing use cases of, hey, in this space, these departments use it. This is the main criteria for it. We got to keep up with it to keep up with their standards. But I'm always encouraging people on how to write those different proposals up to their administration to assist with getting funding. Because sometimes, we write them 3-4 times a year, and not all of them get approved. I mean, but you have to be consistent, and you got to keep at it, because as soon as you get discouraged, then they're just going to say it wasn't worth it. You really don't need this money because you stopped asking. My opinion in it is you keep asking. I don't care how many times they tell you no. At some point, they're going to say yes because they're going to understand it, right? They're going to start asking faculty. They're going to go to the faculty senate. They're going to go to the student senate and say, "What's wrong with our spaces?" And then they may get an earful there, and they don't want to hear an earful there. And that's what we're trying to prevent, is so they don't get an earful if we can get ahead of it.
Right. Okay. So keep bashing that door now. Keep
you got to be consistent.
If you get knocked back, it's like, go for that job interview or whatever. You got to try and keep going at it and keep asking until you get it. that example could be used in many, many different aspects of life. Asking your wife for something, or
well, we change it, right? It's not the same proposal each time. I mean, I'll give you a prime example. Within our own administration, we did it a year ago. We asked for a lot of money. And they came back and said, you need to revisit this. So we as a committee went back and said, what can we do that we don't need to ask for this much money? Well, we decided we didn't need to move walls. We didn't need to do X, Y, Z, and came back and saved over 70% of what we were asking for.
Wow.
Just by reconsidering how can we use what's in there instead of making it like the wow factor to keep up with the Joneses, but hey, let's keep up with the Smiths instead and just do this, right? I mean, it's true. Instead of like making, a weird shaped room into a square, like you would want a nice teaching space to be not acoustically challenged, right? You want it to be proper. So we want to do that. But in some cases, we had to look back and go, what can we do with other materials, with technology to help us not being able to move the walls, to get the different pieces and the parts that we wanted to do that cost the big money, because as we all know, construction is not cheap either, right? People talk about technology being expensive. Well, constructions can be just as expensive. So we didn't want to get rid of technology.
Well, in the States as well, isn't there? That's a whole nother
yes.
Thing
that's a whole nother ball game.
UK, but I know over there that's going to be a real challenge on some of those construction or wall moving things. So, Justin, multi-camera. Let's shift gears and talk a little bit about multi-camera. Whenever I'm doing a presentation around our kind of multi-camera, my first analogy that I always pull out is you got one looking at the lecturer or the teacher, and you got one looking at the students. And you want to see those reactions from both cases. Clearly, obviously, we've had this technology, inherited through One Beyond. How are you talking to colleges around how multi-camera can help enhance their solutions and enhance their environments?
Yeah, so the very simple multi-camera, to your point, the one-in-one, the student and then the teacher. But then when you get into something like a lecture hall, one camera on that student section isn't really going to do it. So you want to be able to have maybe a group of 5 or 10 students where it's more focused. So you want a couple extra cameras there. And then depending on the professor, some professors do like to just sit at a lectern or stand at a lectern and talk the entire time. Others are a little bit more animated. To Dan's point, sometimes you're walking along, you're going to the whiteboard or the chalkboard, and you're, writing out this equation that might be the entire length of the room. So we do have technology that can do presenter tracking, group framing. So if someone else is up there, you can have 2 people and it'll frame them. But do other nice things like lock in on that whiteboard. So when the professor is writing on the whiteboard, someone in the back of the lecture hall might be able to either open up their laptop or have their phone on them and be able to see that stream so you can see it more clearly. And more importantly, the people on the far end have the ability to see that without getting a bit of motion sickness where the camera's following the professor, in the micro movements where, it stays locked on until they walk out of that frame, and then, it continues to follow them back and forth. So the nice thing is with kind of the Baskin-Robbins 32 different flavors that we have on our cameras, we can really fit anything from just one camera, simple PTZ, to this multi-camera, boardroom or lecture hall or specific event space type system.
I mean, Dan, do you is this kind of I don't want to say replacing because everyone's worried about AI replacing people's jobs, but I mean, is this kind of automation? Did you used to do this kind of manually? You'd have like an operator in there going, right now, switch to camera 1, switch to camera 2 in sort of large auditoriums and big lecture theatres. Was there like an operating crew that now some of this technology can start to at least ease their workflow or workload that they can concentrate on other stuff? I don't want to say replacing jobs or whatever through AI, but is this something that the technology you see can help with regards to these kind of automated multi-camera systems?
So yeah, so automation, right? So we talk about the AI stuff, right? And camera manufacturers, including Crestron, buying out One Beyond and everything, and that whole package is helping the industry a lot. So we used to do, like you said, major productions. We still do, and that will never go away when you want a pro video, because we do some lectures and stuff that need pro quality editing done afterwards. So we need to be able to switch and zoom in and be specific on what we're doing. However, I mentioned before about different video recording classes where a faculty member can walk in and hit the record button, and this automation of cameras following and setting up on a whiteboard, and the faculty just be able to hit an ease button of which mode they want to use. They could strictly just keep it on the whiteboard the whole time, or like Justin mentioned, it could follow them across the room without getting seasick, because you can slow the tempo down and it can switch in between. And it has helped tremendous to where we are now, like there's other universities out there. I'm sure you heard like UNLV incorporating it across their entire campus with Frank implementing that out there, which is wonderful. However, that takes money, and not all of us have the finances, like we talked about before, to do that. But to slow roll it, and as you gain, acceptance of that technology and experience across the campus, it will help and will eliminate jobs. It'll slowly allow those people a different opportunity to use their expertise elsewhere on the team, I'm sure. And that may be with how do we integrate these cameras? How do we integrate that technology in the spaces that we're using for even some of those pro recording sessions?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is interesting, and I guess there is that challenge of, say, trying to stay ahead of the curve and to try and implement this stuff. And as you say, it's striking that balance of trying to find the standards and create those standards. Again, we talked about last time, and again, we've covered that off today. One of the other interesting questions I want to ask you, Dan, and there's a great example of this that Carnegie champion back in the day around students sort of solving their own tech problems and issues. You know, there's that great reference that say the first connected device was created by a student at Carnegie Mellon. You know, there are obviously, you know, a lot of very clever students out there. And if they're not getting the kind of experience that they need, that trying to solve those problems again, can you sort of talk us through that? And again, have you got any examples of students solving some of these tech problems or issues?
Well, we just talked about it, right? So recording videos, I will pull out the biggest company that started at Carnegie Mellon with that is Panopto. If you didn't know, Panopto came out of Carnegie Mellon.
Wow.
And those folks have, you know, they were doing their thing years and years ago, and now they're getting, you know, we talk about AI and implement it into their technology. These folks are doing it, and universities are working with, you know, other appliance companies to put that software in line with it and are using it left and right in the spaces. Are we there 100%? It's solved a lot of problems. I can't say that our entire university uses it. I will say that we are trying to all go back to Panopto for those that are not using it, but not one software or one solution that a student will solve every need that you have, right? So we have events needs on our teams, and we have recordings. So we have multiple things that have to happen. But yeah, so I'll give it a different example. Okay.
Cool.
So this goes back to late 90s. Okay. The university, and I talk about money and we talk about keeping up with the Joneses. And, you know, we had a problem at the university to where we had no funding. We didn't have the funding that we had now, but we needed a solution to control a classroom. And internally, the staff and some of the students recognized that, so they developed a piece of hardware. And I will throw a plug in for something that I was heavily involved in years ago called EasyTroll. And we developed a control button pad. It was a 10-button pad that you connected via RS-232 to the projector, used the projector as a switcher. So no longer did I need the big companies. We didn't need the Crestrons of the world, and I'm not going to name the other ones of the world. But we didn't need them anymore, okay? So what we needed was a projector. We needed a projector manufacturer because they had a switcher built into their projector. So why do I need to spend the money on all the switching devices from the Trons of the world? And I could just connect a 10-button pad that would switch the projector on off between sources, turn the volume up and down on it. And back then, the projectors had an audio output. So then we developed an audio piece that would go to an amplifier, and then it would amplify the speakers in the room. So now all you need is a projector and a small amplifier and two of our boxes. And guess what? Voila. We have a small room system that we solved internally. And I will tell you, if I ever showed you pictures of the original box, it looked like a bird's nest. We had more ribbon wires to buttons that had different connections on it. That was ridiculous. And then we got and actually did it on PC boards and then sold it worldwide until we got smashed by the Trons of the world of coming out with better products and stuff like that. But there's another example of we found a solution internally with some students that were programming geniuses that was like, well, if we just did this, and this, we could do it ourselves. So we did. And
I was going to say that leads beautifully onto, you know, another question, because clearly, as you mentioned, some of the manufacturers aren't at these kind of trade shows. They aren't listening necessarily to the needs and the requirements of what, you know, the education, you know, departments need. So you have the floor, Mr. Noullet. What can you tell, or what would you like to tell, not only Crestron, but any other of our competitors that might be listening to this? What do you wish the manufacturers understood about providing educational technologies? Because again, if we're not providing it, then you're going to create it yourself, clearly, for a bunch of ribbon cables. Tell us, we're all listening. What do you need? What do you want? And what are we not giving you? What are we missing?
100%. So, you know, us that have voices, use them. Those that don't have a loud one, you don't hear them. And, you know, manufacturers tried for years to bring in, and education's a lot different, as we know, a part of the industries. We're not the same as your resellers and stuff like that. We have nothing to lose by sharing with each other because, a student coming to Carnegie Mellon is not a student that may be going to Penn State, or maybe they are, or to Pitt, right down the road from us, or the other local universities. So we share a lot of stuff. And what we'd like to do is we'd like to work with manufacturers to actually allow them to develop what we're thinking. But the problem is manufacturers think they know it all. And you said it to start this conversation. You're not at all those trade shows. You're not at all those circles that we're talking about, you guys, right? So your ears are constantly ringing. So one of the things that, we recommend is instead of bringing us in at I will say the 9th hour, because you don't always bring us in at the 12th, but it's usually the 9th hour. After you've already conceptually come up with something to go, this is what we're doing. And we're going, why? You forgot this, and you didn't do this, that, or this, and it's going to cost us too much money because we can't do this because now we got to buy this. And then we just get blank stares of like, well, you can use it in corporate. You asked education. I don't care if you can use it in corporate. I don't give a rat's behind. We need an education, and this is what you need to do. This is how we outfit. This is how we set up. And I would say a majority of the educational units set up things similarly, right? Either we have a rack space or we don't. We have an in-room rack, an outdoor rack, an outside of the room rack, or we're setting stuff up behind a TV, above the ceiling, wherever it may be. We're limited on space and everywhere we do things, and manufacturers don't respect that. Or they don't respect, or they expect us to put it behind a TV when we're like, we can't. We have to put it in a rack. You have no rack ears on this thing. Now I got to buy a shelf. There's all kinds of stuff because of the 9th hour. And Crestron is not the only manufacturer that does this with education. There's plenty of them out there that we do this with. What I highly recommend to a lot of these manufacturers out there is you have a group of people that are willing to share. And we're not going to be penalized for sharing from education, right? Where you go to a reseller, this, that, and the other, there may be this, that, or that. We're all together. You get 12 universities, colleges together. We don't stop. We just, did you do this? Did you try this? We don't care because, again, it doesn't hurt us at an institution level by any means. And manufacturers need to start listening. They need to start listening. Price is huge, and yes, it costs money to manufacture things. Well, maybe reconsider what you're manufacturing, how you're doing it, and listen to your end user and go, okay, well, maybe we need a good and best product because everything we're selling is the best, but maybe this person could use this, and everybody goes, well, we have this. Okay, well, that thing still cost me $1,500, people. Yeah. I was selling a product for a third of what the big boys were selling back in the day. That's a whole nother story we can get into another day, Neil. But this one here with the manufacturers it's unreal. And then when we say something and then the product comes out and it has nothing with what we talked about, it really, really puts the blood pressure up of those circles of going, why are we even dealing with this company when they say they're listening, but at the end of the day, they're just giving it, they're just listening and then, okay, we're going to do what we want to do anyhow because these folks don't know what they're talking about. I mean, I'll give an example. A year ago, we had this session with Crestron, right? The products are being released, this, that, and the other. But when we were at that session, the looks that, when somebody's like, oh, you need to have do this, it was just like, oh, like you have end users that will share with you, right? So whenever you have an idea, say, hey, we need to get the idea people. These are the mouths of the industry. These are the ones that are quiet, but we know that they have great ideas. Let's bring them all together because usually you might have to have 2 sessions because the quiet ones usually don't get 2 words in when you have the loud ones in the same room. I'm just saying I've been in some of those sessions. So sometimes I don't, some of us get our words in, some don't. Some of us don't speak, some of us do. It's one of those things. But when you sit them at dinner, that's the other thing. Always putting a Crestron employee in between 2 higher ed people, you'll learn a lot. Yeah. And it'll be about the complaining. It'll be about the goods and the bads you'll get across the board with education because, I can sit here and give positive notes of things that Crestron's done for us. I can sit here and give you negative notes of what Crestron's done done for us, I guess. And same with other manufacturers. I'm going to give some more examples of what can manufacturers do to help us.
Go on.
I'm a relationships kind of guy. I love my relationships in the industry. I'm an honest person. If you haven't been able to tell by any of these podcasts or any of the keynotes that I've done with Crestron, I'm just going to tell you how it is. And one of the things that bothers me is whenever we're dealing with our local vendors and our folks that are repping these major manufacturers, and you have to, at university levels, you usually have to go out the bid, and a lot of them go with the lowest bidder. And they're not always the best fit personality-wise when you're dealing with the lowest bid company because of, the relationships that you have or whatever. And what I don't understand, and I'll probably never understand it, is the tiered pricing that because you buy more as a vendor, as a reseller, you get better discounts. Well, you know what? To be honest with you, I got to go through hoops in order to get my local people that we have a partnership with and we collaborate with, not only with designs and programming. We kind of share our industry needs and everything with them, and they share theirs with us, which helps us because at a university, sometimes you're blinded because you're at your university. We're not industry. We're not going to all the different Microsoft Ignites and different things. And we are listening to other universities. But one thing that, I don't appreciate from manufacturers is this price tiering that hurts us. And people are like, well, you just got to talk to I shouldn't have to do that. And that's the part that makes me upset when everybody doesn't have a fair playing field. And then you talk about inflation and this, that, and the other. There's no way that we'll ever know and understand why there's so much inflation if everybody has a tier. And it's like, dude, you're like $800 more than this person. And then you have the collaboration and they're like, $800 more? Dude, I only have $100 markup on this. So that means they're getting it for X amount better than us. We'll never be able to compete. And to me, it's unfair because, I'm having this conversation with large industry dealers right now of, you have no boots on the ground in my territory. We talk about inflation and everything, and with everybody not being on the same playing field, we don't know what's true and what's not, right? Until I have to be with my partners and say, dude, you completely lost this bid because you were this. And I think I was stating that, if they're not getting the same price and they're only giving me $100, they're only charging me $100 for their upcharge and the other company's $800 cheaper. Well, wow, that's an unfair playing field. And as partners that we have with university, we have preferred providers. We have preferred people that we like to use. And when we come across this, it's tough. And I was just meeting with other folks in the area of, they're like, well, we want to gain your business. And I'm like, well, you have no boots on the ground here in Pittsburgh. I can't use a company that I got to wait 3 days to get support because they got to fly somebody in from Buffalo. They got to bring somebody in from Midwest Ohio. I need somebody here within the hours of support. And, I'm talking to these bigger companies. They're like, well, we can sell you boxes, this, that, and the other, but I need a partner as well, right? I can buy boxes and that's great, because I have a lot of box sale purchasing because we do a lot of in-house work. But manufacturers, I understand, hey, you're this big companies, and I'm not going to say their names because I don't want to give them the benefit of the doubt here. But yeah, they buy a lot of product. That's great. But most of them, in my opinion, if they're not in your area, they win that job and then they're not back. Right? They're not here. They're not here us.
Yeah, locality and relationship. I think from what you're saying, it definitely up there as a priority over and above. In some cases, features and functions and stuff. It's again who's going to work with you, support you, and give you the, as I say, the support that you need. Versus we've got some spangly new thing, but we're going to be 3 days on support, or you've got to buy a spare one to keep in a cupboard in case it goes wrong.
Well, yeah, in a place like us that we have standards, we have our own design team. We do our own drawings. We do a lot of things in-house. So we're expecting just a good partner and to help us get through what we're trying to accomplish. And every time you bring those big companies in because they can bid lower than anybody else because their product lines are so low because they're buying millions and millions and millions upon millions of dollars, even just a warehouse sometimes just to get that price break, to me is unfair to your end user, to me, the buyer, right? I'm buying it. And now I can't use a good person, relationship builder within my area unless I go through hoops by calling, hey, I got to call my rep to say, hey, this person should get it. Well, they need to sign up for I do all of my own drawings. I'm not giving it to them to sign up to get a discount to be, there's all these protocol things that manufacturers want you to jump through to do this out of the other. And I prefer the flat line across the board for a lot of these industries. The big boys might get mad, but if everybody's playing on the same playing field, let's really see who can help you in this industry locally, or maybe it helps them in the market. Maybe they can get more boots on the ground in your market if they're on a true playing field, because they really don't care. As long as they can get in and get the job, make a buck and get out. I'm not a fan of that model, but you got to do what you got to do too in the industry. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Justin, what I mean, obviously you're out there. What advice can you give to the universities and the educational faculties as well as partners? What advice can you give them, and how can they engage better with you? And what do they need from you, and how can you help them as a Crestron representative?
Right. Yeah. I mean, essentially think of me as an extension of your department, or think of my counterparts as an extension of your department. We're here to help you out. It was great feedback to hear, essentially, lowest bid isn't always the best bid, which is a nice condensed way of hearing what Dan had to say. And I definitely agree. Each project has its own issues, its own cases, its own needs. And to be in the loop from the beginning is always best. Understanding, you guys have 1,000,001 plates spinning, and you don't need that extra one to say, oh, let me give Justin a call, or let me give my local rep a call and make sure that I download all this information to him so he has it. But the more information, the better. At Crestron, we definitely have a education-focused mindset. We have an entire division dedicated just to the education channel. And that goes from salespeople to marketing people to back office people. We do have special programs for the education market, whether it's specialized pricing or whether it's training. So training is also another huge thing, I would say. Make sure you get trained up. The more you know, the better you'll be. So same thing with schooling. That's why you're going for higher education. Make sure that your departments get trained up on things. That way, when there is an issue, maybe you don't have to call that guy who's flying in from Buffalo, and quite possibly, one of your techs would be able to handle it. Understanding, obviously, you have another job to do, but the more that you can do, the more important you are to wherever you are. So that's always a good thing. Training and communication, I would say, that are the two biggest ones.
So I'm going to come back with another question for you there, Justin. So you have a whole education department for the education side of the world, right? In my opinion, most education sides of the houses are here to help us and listen, because obviously you can't have one rep repping consultants, government, healthcare, education, sales teams, all that stuff, right? So you have separate folks to help with that. But what you're not helping us with is actual pricing, right? Yes, Crestron has A+ pricing. Let's not mistake that. We've kicked people off campus because they've actually quoted us over top of that A+ pricing. We sent it to Crestron. They're no longer allowed to bid on us because they didn't understand the program. So to me, they didn't understand what the world's trying to do in this industry. So yes, that's great. However, we're always getting prices lower than the A+ price, right? And to me, what we should be able to do is register certain preferred vendors. And if I have 3 preferred vendors on my MSA at the university, I should be able to register all of them to have the best pricing for the university, or at least equal to your best partner, right? That's just a food for thought for business of how can you help the local universities with their actual MSA partners. And if you don't know what an MSA is, that's master service level, master service agreement.
I was going to ask again, that's an acronym I've not heard of. So
yeah, it's a master service agreement that we have with our vendors, right? With our dealers. So something along those lines, food for thought, just something to throw out there.
Absolutely.
And I just thought of it while we were on this call. So nobody else has this information right now, Justin. So I'm sure you'll get that back to whoever you need to before Neil posts this.
Will do.
Very cool.
And
Very
I'll give you
cool.
credit as well.
Now, Dan, you're obviously out there, and again, you've been. We've had you at Modern Work Summit, we've had you on Crest TV, and now obviously on the Smart Space podcast. Really appreciate your feedback. And again, there is some huge learnings that you should go teaching. You should really be in education. Obviously, as I say, you're doing a great deal with the standards as well. So, where can people? Are you open for people kind of reaching out? Is there a kind of standards body that you're in, and maybe we should start like a council or something on this? But how can people reach out to you, and how can people, do you offer help and support for other educational faculties?
Yeah, so as far as standards go, standards are different from university to university. Again, like Justin mentioned before, it's, the use cases of where you're at, what you're doing, what people are used to. But yeah, to reach out to me, I'm sure you have my LinkedIn information through this that you'll post. Send me an email directly. That's the best way. I've actually had people reach out to me through LinkedIn, through the industry that weren't even education, and they asked me about our cast that we did before the Modern Workday Summit on the standardization and grading of our spaces. And it was an outside company, a dealer from North Carolina that came into Pittsburgh to have a meeting with me to discuss it, which was really cool. So it's not just for education, it's for anybody out there to help with your users and the people that you're trying to sell this to. Is you can help them as well, and you don't have to be in the education world just to reach out.
Yeah, so you're a great advocate. Justin, where can people hook up with you if they need any help with regards to education, not just in the Northeast, but again, what is the kind of entry point for educational into the world of Crestron education? Where should they go? What should they do?
So the website, although there's a lot of information on that, if you type in education, you could probably filter your way through. I have a wonderful email alias at Crestron, so my email is justin@crestron.com.
I want one of those. I want Neil at Crestron. There's another Neil in Crestron, so we'll have to fight. He's been here longer than me. So.
But yeah, I mean, reach out. I am, as much as can be, part of the ETC and the next levels and the all of the education councils that are out there. So find me on LinkedIn, send me an email at Crestron, or bump into me at the street and start talking.
Very cool. Gentlemen, thank you ever so much for joining us. Dan, we're going to get you back. You're like a regular on the show now.
Absolutely.
And I can't wait. We need to do it in person, and we need to go riding. Absolutely, for sure. And thank you all for tuning in. If you are new here, then join us. We're on all good, well-known podcast platforms, wherever you get your podcast. Join in, subscribe, give us a thumbs up and a like, or whatever that platform requires you to do. And we will catch you on the next one.